Thank you, Scott. I'd like actually to begin to draw a little bit of a parallel between the weekly portion of the Torah this week, which really spoke to me in a very relevant way about the research we're about to discuss. In Parshat Pinchas, the portion of Pinchas, once we sort of get into the aftermath of a very traumatic incident in Jewish history where the nation was almost destroyed through dissension. Shortly into the portion, God commands Moses and Eleazar, the priest, to take a census. And the commentators speculate, this is now 39 years into the journey in the desert, what is the reason for taking a census now? So Rashi, a great commentator, basically said, well, it's sort of like a shepherd who's lost some sheep, and that's what happened in the aftermath of this terrible dissension, and now wants to count how many are left. But the words of the Abarbanel, the 15th century Spanish Portuguese commentator, really speak, I think, to the matter at hand today. Because the Abarbanel said the Jewish people were on the verge of needing to think about how are we going to settle the land of Israel. There's one more year, they're on their way to the land, and they took the census to basically do two things. One, assess the challenge in front of them, and two, count the troops, count the leadership, figure out how they were going to deploy their resources to tackle this huge project of settling the land. And I think we can learn a lot from that in terms of how to receive and interpret the survey that we have in front of us. Because the reality is that what we are gaining here are insights that boards of directors, presidents, and these are, in my estimation, people who deserve the highest respect and acclaim and approbation, have taken an honest look at how they can prepare themselves and their organizations to tackle the huge challenge of school economic affordability that faces us, which is no less in its own right a challenge than the Israelites faced in terms of how to settle the land of Israel. And just as they were assessing in those days, what is the land like, what is the landscape, so too has the Institute for University School Partnership at Yeshiva University stepped back and assessed in a quantitative way, in a research way, the huge affordability challenge that our people face. And we've tried to put some numbers to it, because numbers always help to kind of clear one's ideas about what is the task ahead. So let me just give you some rough numbers. How big is the industry? Well, we have a $2 billion enterprise in Jewish day school education. Financial aid, $500 million in growth. $500 million. If one was to create an endowment to generate $500 million, one would need billions and billions of dollars, right? So the answer to this huge challenge, which is growing because of the economic conditions of the day, is not just simplistically, let's build an endowment. There has to be more to it. And we have actually developed a four-pronged strategy to address school affordability, just as the Israelites planned, where is Reuven going to go, where is Shimon going to go, where is Yehuda going to go. And I'd like to lay out briefly the four prongs of that strategy, and then talk importantly about one of the particular prongs which relates to the matter at hand. So the four prongs, and it's going to take a multifaceted effort to deal with this big problem. First, communal fundraising. It has a place. It definitely has a place. And let's just throw a number out. If we could raise $1 billion in terms of fundraising nationally for Jewish day schools, that would generate perhaps $50 million in annual income. So I'm just juxtaposing $50 million against $500 million of scholarship. Is it a help? You bet it's a help, and we should make it happen. We should do it, and I'll talk in a minute about how you and the Institute are active in encouraging communal fundraising. But it isn't enough. In addition, schools need to look at inter-school and intercommunal collaboration. In other words, we need to share our resources better across schools and across communities. And we need to look at sharing how we buy things, and sharing the back office of schools, and looking how we can share space, and looking how we can be more efficient and utilize our capacity. And we believe in our analysis that that can generate anywhere between $50 and $150 million annually toward this huge crisis. Is it a lot of work? Yes. Can it be done? Yes. Is the Institute involved in trying to make it happen? Yes. I'll give you some case examples in a minute. Thirdly, we need to look at, within the bounds of constitutional separations of church and state, we need to look at ways to maximize government support of our day schools. Within those bounds, we believe, and there already are examples of where school districts and states are supporting day schools. We've been involved recently through our work in the 5 towns, Far Rockaway, convening a group of schools who, together with other organizations, went up to Albany and recouped $40 million in one fell swoop to help support day schools that had been taken away by the New York State Legislature. So working on the government and trying to maximize funding for day schools, that could be a huge piece. Is it the whole thing? No. Now we come to the fourth piece. And the fourth piece is what we're talking about today. Day schools themselves, based on our analysis and my work and our work as an institute with many day schools, can help themselves too. And we believe that there is $100 million annually that day schools, through revenue enhancement and expense management, can improve their margins and allocate either to reducing tuition increases or to increasing financial aid. And when you put those 4 strategies together, you may not have solved the affordability problem, but you're able to really start making a dent in it. We as an institute are devoted to this multi-pronged attack. We are working right now in 3 communities, the 5 towns, Far Rockaway, Philadelphia, and we're starting our work in Bergen County to help encourage these communal activities. And I'm going to talk now about the last piece. Where do boards of directors fit in terms of helping schools maximize their economic performance? Turns out boards are critically important. At the end of the day, the board employs the head of the school, the Rosh Yeshiva, or the Nahal, and is responsible for the fiscal solvency of the school. So this first ever study, and I'd like to advance the slides, is the first time a comprehensive look has been made at what are boards of directors doing on this front. And again, to the credit of our board's presidents, who were the respondents to the study, they have revealed to us some insights into how to improve how boards help their schools become more affordable. Let's talk about the study for a minute. The criteria for what we defined as good practice were based on research in terms of the experts. PEAGE, the National Association of Independent Schools, BoardSource, a guru on nonprofit board management, ISM, a consulting firm that does a lot of research on good board practice, and accounting firms like Grant Thornton who focus on good practice. So what we've done in our research is we've extrapolated on what are the principles of good governance that boards should observe. Next, we went to the experts and the conveners. We went to the networks who the school's affiliated with. Pardes, Jane represents Pardes, welcome. We went to ROSA, Dr. Mark Kramer was heavily involved in the research. The Solomon Schechter Association, Dr. Elaine Cohen, who was critically important in research, and YU's network with modern Orthodox schools. And we engaged them in developing the survey, refining the survey, and I would be less than, recognizing of Hakarat HaTov if I didn't recognize PEAGE's contribution in the form of Dr. and Rabbi Josh Elkin's mentorship. He graciously, from the day I talked about the survey, said, how can I help? This is important work, served as one of my thesis advisors. So this is a communal activity that we've taken on here. To date, and the number keeps going up, we actually have 72 respondents. We have covered nearly a quarter of the universe of the networks, and we're adding schools every day. Let's talk for a minute about what the results show. And I want to go to the 7 areas of assessment. The first is visioning, strategic and long-range financial planning. Long-range planning. Secondly, use of committees to do the work of the board. The committees are the muscle of the board. They make it happen. Efforts to educate members of boards, clarify the board's role versus professionals, and to improve board capabilities was the third area. Fourth, fulfillment of fiduciary responsibilities, the obligation of trust that a board has to the school, making sure that board members are cognizant and respectful of them. Fifth, the quality of the relationship between the board and the head of school. This is, and Cheryl Finkel is probably the world's expert on this from PEACH, this is a critically important aspect of the board's relationship. How well the board president and the head of school and the Mahal, the Rosh Yeshiva get together. How well they coordinate. Bylaws, the written standards of how the railroad, so to speak, runs. How is the board going to make decisions, etc. And finally, fundraising and advocacy, which is very relevant to the topic at hand. So this was a comprehensive survey. We looked at all 7 areas. And I'd like to share some highlights of the findings, which I regard as a direction for the future, and as a positive sign of where do we go next. Let's talk about visioning, strategic, and long-range financial planning. What were the findings? Just under 40% of board presidents strongly agreed that their schools were fulfilling these basic obligations. On the other hand, when we look at long-range plan in terms of the financial future of the school, only a quarter of the board presidents were very satisfied with their board's performance. That is critically important because this lays out the roadmap for the school to deal with the affordability challenges. And if we can improve that, it is a huge lever for improvement. Only 1/3 of the presidents strongly agreed that, yes, we have this plan, but we're reflecting what this plan says in our annual plan. So that suggests that there's an opportunity to take the strategic plan out of off the shelf and actually put it to use, right? So this is the planning spectrum, and it shows a lot of opportunity for improvement. Let's move next to committee effectiveness. Again, the committees are the groups of people who take on a piece of the strategic challenges of the school and must run with that, working with the school administration. How are we doing and where's there room for improvement? Board presidents felt much more sanguine about their performance in this area. There were committees that were chartered, they were working. However, there's some opportunities here as well. Only about a quarter of the board presidents strongly agreed that their actual board meetings were focused on strategic issues as opposed to operational issues. Meaning, the hard things that create long-term positive change that you can't accomplish, day to day, were not the focus of many board meetings. This is an opportunity again. What if we could make that time totally productive, focused on the strategy? Only 1/3 of board presidents strongly agreed that there was a year-round effort to find new board members who could bring wealth, wisdom, and work to the board. Many schools feel this is mission impossible. Only our parents will serve on the board. But the reality is, if you have a year-round nominating or committee on trustees, you can and should bring in outside blood and perspective and wealth into the school. And many schools in the survey did that, but there's a room for improvement. Moving to board education and role clarity. Over half strongly agreed or somewhat disagreed that the board annually self-assesses itself and uses self-assessment to improve its operations or receives formal education. The reality is, as educators, and many of us here are educators, we know how powerful education can be to motivate action. This is a huge lever for improvement that we can bring to bear on our boards. Finally, let me touch on bylaws. Strength in bylaws. Board presidents said 71% strongly agreed that their bylaws have limits on the number of consecutive terms that board members can hold. That's good news up to a point because it means new blood needs to come in. On the other hand, only 1/4 strongly agreed that there were programs to help members understand the bylaws and that there was a limit on the percentage of parent participation in the board. Why is this important? Because if we want to, for example, raise incremental funds from the community or bring in fresh ideas, boards need to have the discipline of having to bring in outsiders. And this is a constraint. The board head of school relationship, a lot of strengths here. Board presidents indicated overwhelmingly that a special board committee was once a year providing summative feedback to its head of school. Just under half strongly agreed that there was a head of school education evaluation and support committee who counseled the head of school. But fewer than 40% of board presidents strongly agreed that the board is providing written goals. So we have evaluation on the one hand, but a lack of written goals on the other hand. And that the head of school and the board president meet regularly. Again, there's a lot to feel good about, but there's a lot to improve. Let me get to the final area, fundraising and advocacy. Overall, this was an area where board presidents, to their credit, saw an opportunity for improvement. Nearly half strongly agreed they had a development committee working on fundraising. However, only about 30% of board presidents were very satisfied with the extent to which their own board members were giving one of their top philanthropic gifts to the school. Only about a quarter of them were strongly satisfied with the extent to which board members were identifying potential major donors to the school and helping to cultivate them. If we just grasp that opportunity in and of itself, we could make a huge turnaround in the fundraising picture. So let me sort of summarize the good news here in this study. There's a lot of opportunity to improve. But I say this not facetiously. You know, we say every Shabbat in our prayers, I have nothing but respect for the people who give up their time voluntarily without compensation to serve on boards of directors of Jewish organizations, including day schools. I have nothing but respect for board members who could complete a survey like this and acknowledge areas where they are self-critical and want to improve. Because to me, this is the door meaning D-O-O-R, to improvement that is going to take our schools forward. And I want to talk for one minute about what YU is intending to do with these results, working in conjunction with our partners, PEAGE and the school networks and communities. Because we feel that this is an opportunity of unparalleled power. The first ever study of board presidents and how they feel about areas of opportunities. We must jump on this and help make change happen while the time is right. So what we are doing to start with is we're working in 3 communities, as I mentioned, the Bergen County, Philadelphia, and the 5 towns. We are convening meetings of all the schools, and we will be discussing these results with the board presidents, with the heads of the administration, and laying out with them what to do about improving the situation. We're doing the same thing. We intend to mount what I call a road show, where we're going to go out into the other cities where we're not working in depth. We have dates in Chicago that we're planning at the end of August. We're looking at Los Angeles. We're looking at major cities around the country, South Florida. And we intend to take this on a road show, working with partners, which could be federations, could be PEAGE, and we hope it is. It could be the networks, and we've had discussions with Jane about working with Parties Network to take this out there and basically cause this to be an impetus for change. We're at the start of the board season. This is a great time to implement the findings. So rather than sit on this, we're taking this on the road, and we think it can be a huge force for change, and we view this as great news. So let me summarize. The affordability challenge is bigger than any one thing. It's not inexpensive schools. It's not, running programs to just save money on things like healthcare. Those are important. They're not sufficient. There are 4 prongs. 1, we need to look at communal fundraising. 2, we need to look at inter-school collaboration and even intercommunal collaboration. Synagogues, schools, BJEs, federations working together to save money. 3, we need to look at increasing governmental support for day school educational funding, for programming within the letter of the law. And fourth, we need to help our schools using boards as a fulcrum and as a lever to help schools generate what we believe is $100 million a year. Thank you very much.
We'd now like to open up the floor to questions as well as to our viewers who have joined us online. So please go ahead. Whoever has a question, please feel free to ask.
I invite Scott and Dean Schnall to join me.
Hi, Jacob Berkman from JTA. So in reading the study and in listening to you talk right now, one of the numbers that jumped out to me was one of the areas where board presidents were satisfied was that they had, I guess, a sufficient rule to allow a limited time on a board. And also, you just mentioned that only a third of those board members that you talked to actually gave their biggest gift to their schools. So to me, it says that while these people are committing to, helping out with these schools, they're not really fully committing. And how do you change that?
Jacob, it's a very good point. I think one of the things that brings it all together was one of the survey findings about what I'll call the Committee on Trustees or the Nominating Committee. In other words, arguably the most important committee on a board is that which is the talent scout and talent developer for the board. And this is a committee, again, sometimes called the Nominating Committee or Committee on Trustees, which basically looks at the school's strategic needs through its strategic plan and says, what kind of personnel do we need on our board to deal with these challenges? The analogy would be, let's say you have a sports team that didn't win the pennant last year, but now they're saying, how do I win that pennant? What they're doing is they're taking stock of their personnel in light of who they have to be. Right, in light of the challenges. And the fact that many committees on trustees are not working year-round and are not thinking strategically, year-round, except for Shabbos, of course, and even then you can't stop thinking about this, right? Who do we really need? What kind of profile of board members do we need? But instead often wait till a couple of months before the new board term. This is a sign and an opportunity for improvement so that we do what you're saying. We get the right people on the board who will understand that they have to make a major gift to the school within their means, who will understand that they have to serve on committees, who will understand that they have to look for major donors for the school. This is the linchpin committee, and if we do nothing else in our roadshows and our teaching, but teach the implementation of this practice, we will do a great service to Jewish day schools. The other thing I want to say is I can't emphasize sufficiently the importance of that first area within the survey, visioning, strategic planning, and long-range financial planning. Because boards that have a direction and a goal are much better suited to organize the activities and decide who needs to be on the team than ones who haven't taken the time to put those documents together and think them through. So that's another linchpin to make sure that we have the right people on our boards, and that when we have a board meeting, right, we don't talk about operating issues, we talk about what are we doing at this meeting to accomplish our strategic plan, to accomplish our long-range financial plan. And one of the benefits of that, you didn't ask me about this, but as I derived from Yeshiva University, is that there's a role for educators and there's a role for board members. And if educators can focus on education and board members can focus on making the flour or the kemach to fund the school, right? Not to say that they don't have some obligation to make sure that the school is run well, then we would be accomplishing two great things at once. And all too often our boards fall into the trap of managing education. And guess what they're not doing if they're managing education? They're not managing the finances of the school. They're not ensuring that the school has a strategic direction. So this whole picture comes together, I think, through the survey. A committee on trustees that's looking for the right board members, that is training them and educating them to accomplish the strategic plan. And I think that that's the key to the puzzle. And on our roadshow, you can bet we're going to be focused on this.
Harry, I have a question from Ezzy from Kew Garden Hills Online, and his first question is, will the results of the survey, i.e. the questions posed and answers given, be published publicly?
Absolutely. This will be available on the Institute's website instantaneously. I think I can say that because Marty is here and Marty makes it all happen, but it'll be available absolutely. We want this to be a service to every school. Other questions?
Can I make a comment? Yes, of course.
I'm Cheryl Minkle, and I get to represent Peach today. I'm a senior consultant at Peach. I just think, I want to just say thank you to Harry, to YU for and the Azrieli School and the partnership, and to Scott for making, for doing research like this, for actually, bringing the university expertise to bring research to reinforce our beliefs. Now we have some evidence for the beliefs that we've all promoted, that we've said, and particularly in Peach's new strategy, which focuses on leadership at the head, leadership at the board level, and financial sustainability. You just have given us research-based evidence to uphold our direction. It's completely consistent with the direction we're trying to take in our new strategy.
And I just want to pay tribute to Cheryl, who is a very distinguished head of school, a senior consultant at Peach, who has, single-handedly been tackling many of these issues together and has been a mentor to me. And I want to thank you for your words of support. And we look forward to increasing the participation of all day schools out there in the survey so that they can get firsthand information that will help them pinpoint where they can improve in their performance. And I really want to thank Peach and Pardes, again, and Rob Suck, and the Schechter Association for their support. This is a big job, and we all need to be working on this together. Thank you.
I have another question here. It says, do you think there should be an examination of the structure of schools from the ground up rather than a top-down approach to see what could be done better?
The answer is yes and yes. If you look at our approach to how we're sort of taking the findings of this survey and tackling affordability on the road, we are in fact doing top-down and bottoms-up. So we have a three-pronged approach to our effort when we go into a school or a group of schools. One, we do look at their economics from the ground up. So we're really trying to understand how they do what they do, and even draw parallels across schools of similar size and similar educational vision to see what we can learn from one to the other. Second of all, through the expertise of the Azrieli Graduate School, we are looking from the ground up at their educational delivery processes. Not at their hashkafa or the content of what they're delivering, but the excellence with which they are delivering it. And we are trying to make suggestions from the bottoms up through experts like Dr. Jeffrey Glanz from the Azrieli School, who help us sort of assess areas of strength and areas that can be improved. And finally, we're looking at, through this board survey as a diagnostic tool, at how we can help their board work more productively. So it's a multi-pronged effort. It's top-down, it's bottom-up, it's holistic, and we believe that that's how you have to attack this tremendous challenge.
I have another question from Josh from the Jewish Standard. He wants to know, as this roadshow, in quotations, moves forward, how will you interact with existing community groups working on the tuition crisis?
So I'll talk about what we're currently doing and what we're in the process of doing. So currently, for example, we are working with existing communal groups. There's a there's a JEF organization, the Jewish Educational Fund in the 5 towns. We are working with them to, because they've already been working with community rabbis to look at affordability strategies. We are arm in arm with them, trying to help them with project planning and implementation. In Bergen County, there's a very well-established, similar name, JEFG, Jewish Educational Fund for the Generations, if I got that right, which is also a very well-organized consortium of all of the day schools and all of the rabbis in the area, cross-denominational, and we are helping them develop strategies. In Philadelphia, where we're planning to do a roadshow, we are working with PEAGE, with Josh. I've reached out to Cheryl Finkel here, Senior PEAGE Consultant, and with the Federation of Philadelphia to organize the roadshow. We're doing similar things in Chicago. We're doing similar things in other communities. So our desire is to help pull together all of the communal efforts so we're not duplicative. We're all working in concert. I'll just give you one last vignette. Approximately 3 weeks ago, we held the third communal forum in the 5 towns in Far Rockaway, and it was about the topic of major donor cultivation and planned giving. Featured guests, and I think this exemplifies what we're trying to do, Rabbi Herb Tobin of PEAGE, probably the fundraiser par excellence. I hope someday I know as much as Herb has forgotten about fundraising. And Dr. Eric Levine of UJC, who brought great expertise in terms of major donor cultivation. I think that's an example of how we are working together with communal organizations to basically create synergy.
This is more of a comment than a question. It's from Rabbi Saul Paves from Sao Paulo, Brazil. He says, we've been discussing some of your issues for the last 2 years. It is very important for us to have this kind of survey.
I would love to go to Brazil.
And you can translate it into Portuguese.
How about if I come out? Other questions, comments?
I do have Evie from Bergen County wants to know who is there to make sure that the tuition and other funds are being distributed properly, i.e. the educators getting paid?
You know, one of the tremendous challenges, and I having worked with a lot of boards, I know they take this not only to heart, but keeps them sleepless at night, is to make sure that their schools are financially solvent. And I think to a board member that I have met, this is one of their key preoccupations. I think the school is an ecosystem. The board, the educators need to work together. And the reason that affordability is so important, I think, is twofold. One, we need to make sure that kids can attend school, Jewish day schools, and that nobody's turned away. But two, we owe it to the selfless educators who give their everything to devote themselves to our children, that they earn, you know, a decent wage, that they're paid, and don't have to worry about affordability. One of the reasons we harp in the survey on the importance of long-range financial planning is because if you only plan year to year or month to month, you don't even think about things like building a reserve for bad times, right? In business, we think about those things sometimes, not all the time. But if you're only planning year to year, you're very unlikely to start thinking about, I need a rainy day fund, I need a reserve, to make sure that our teachers get paid. So this is, I think, highlights the importance of long-range financial planning and fundraising.
There's another question which I'll just answer for everyone online and in the room. People want to know, is this press conference being recorded, and will the link be posted? It will be. It will be on the university, on the institute's website, which is yu.edu/school partnership.
I just wanted to.
Could you please identify yourself?
Toby Bergman. I'm a master's student at the Yeshiva Graduate School. Wondering, what degree do you think that the smaller size and like the inefficiencies of small-scale education that are many communities, the sometimes very divisive, like sliver of a school this way, a school that way, they're not exactly the same. Is that playing into the development of like these management issues and finding and staffing boards?
I think it's a great question. I think one of the, the Torah tells us, lo titgodedu, that we shouldn't, split ourselves into little splinters. The reality is that schools have a certain economy of scale. In other words, you have a certain amount of fixed cost, right? Whether it's for a building, whether it's for an administration, right? If you are below a certain threshold of size, right, then what you find is that schools often have to compromise on the educational program because they're not covering their fixed costs. So we think it's important for schools and for boards of directors and community leaders to step back and say, what are the really distinctive parts of schools? Because we want to preserve those, whether it's hashkafic differences, etc. But what are the things they can do together to share resources? And that could be a whole range of things, from purchasing together to back office accounting together, to things that don't even touch the student, right, to professional development together. And so we think there's a way to create a new model of school where we're keeping different the things that really make us different and need to be different and preserved, but sharing the things that don't have to be different. And we think that now is the time for that soul searching, and we think it's incumbent on our boards to be open to working with other boards to put some of those issues on the table. Because without it, as you say, there are many schools that are below critical mass in terms of their ability to run their operations. So rather than lose the whole school, look at the things that are distinctive and maximize those and share with us.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope this was helpful and informative. And we would welcome you, we encourage you to contact us online, or you have Harry's email address there. And the address is www.yu.edu/school-partnership. Get that right? And again, thank you. We look forward to seeing you online as well as in a roadshow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.